My dad's girlfriend told me to call her mom, then try to kick me out. She wanted to be my mom, but she never expected me to hit record when she thought no one was listening. Hey everyone, before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button if you want more stories just like this. Thanks for the support. Alex, 16, had always been close to their father. After losing their mother to cancer 3 years ago, they had developed a bond that was unbreakable. They navigated grief together, supported each other through the difficult days, and created new routines that helped them heal. Their father, a kind but lonely man, had thrown himself into work to cope with the loss, leaving Alex to spend many evenings alone in their suburban home. That's why when their father started dating Sarah 6 months ago, Alex tried to be supportive, even though it felt like a betrayal of their mother's memory. Sarah was everything their mother wasn't: outgoing, loud, and attention-seeking. She had perfectly styled blonde hair, always wore expensive clothes, and had a laugh that filled every room she entered. At first, she seemed nice enough, bringing small gifts for Alex and making an effort to connect. But there was something about her that didn't sit right with Alex. It was in the way she looked at family photos around the house, as if calculating how long it would take to replace them with her own. The first red flag came during dinner on a Tuesday night. Sarah had been coming over more frequently, and this particular evening, she brought a homemade lasagna that was surprisingly delicious. As they ate, she kept touching their father's arm, laughing too loudly at his jokes, and making pointed comments about how a woman's touch was exactly what their house needed. Then it happened. She turned to Alex with a syrupy, sweet smile and suggested that since she was becoming such an important part of their lives, it might be nice if Alex started calling her mom. The suggestion hung in the air like poison gas. Alex's fork clattered against the plate as their father quickly intervened, explaining that it was too soon for such a big step. But Sarah had planted the seed. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's campaign intensified. She would casually leave parenting articles around the house about blended families and the importance of accepting new parental figures. She bought Alex a necklace with a heart pendant, claiming it was a mother-daughter/son symbol. Each time she visited, she rearranged something in the house. A throw pillow here, a photo there, slowly erasing traces of Alex's mother. Their father seemed oblivious, perhaps willfully so, flattered by the attention and happy to have someone fill the emptiness that had lingered since his wife's passing. Alex tried to talk to their father about the discomfort they felt, but he would wave away their concerns, attributing them to teenage resistance to change. "Sarah's just trying to connect with you," he would say, not understanding that her attempts felt more like a hostile takeover than genuine interest. Alex felt increasingly isolated, watching as this woman systematically inserted herself into every aspect of their lives, with their father as her unwitting accomplice. The breaking point came when Sarah arrived one day with a key to their house. She announced that she had been talking to their father, and they had agreed it was time for her to move in. She presented it as a wonderful surprise, but to Alex, it felt like an invasion. As she stood in the living room, already planning which curtains to replace and which furniture to move, Alex realized this wasn't just about their father finding happiness anymore. This was about Sarah claiming territory, and Alex was standing in the way. That night, as Sarah's boxes began appearing in the hallway, Alex knew their life was about to change in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The battle for their home, their family, and their mother's legacy had just begun. The morning after Sarah moved in felt surreal. Alex walked into the kitchen to find her already rearranging the cabinets, removing their mother's favorite mugs, and replacing them with a matching set she had brought. She hummed to herself as if she owned the place, and when she noticed Alex watching, she simply smiled and said that a fresh start required fresh things. The casual dismissal of items that had been in their family for years sent a chill down Alex's spine. Within the first week, Sarah's presence had completely transformed the house. The living room, once a comfortable space filled with their mother's carefully selected furniture and Alex's childhood photos, now resembled a page from a home decor magazine. Neutral colors replaced the warm tones their mother had loved, and most of the family pictures had been discreetly moved to Alex's room. When Alex asked where they had gone, Sarah explained that she was creating a more adult, living space and that Alex could keep all the nostalgic items in their bedroom. The message was clear. The main part of the house was hers now. Sarah's behavior grew increasingly controlling. She implemented new house rules without consulting their father, many of which seemed specifically designed to inconvenience Alex. Curfew was moved earlier for Alex, though their father often worked late and Sarah herself would go out with friends. Alex was now responsible for additional chores, while Sarah seemed to contribute little beyond redecorating. She would comment on Alex's clothing choices, suggesting more appropriate attire, and made passive-aggressive remarks about their eating habits, study schedule, and friends. Their father remained oblivious to these changes. He came home to a perfectly clean house, home-cooked meals, and a smiling girlfriend who greeted him at the door. From his perspective, Sarah was improving their lives, bringing order and happiness back into their home. When Alex tried to point out the changes, he would dismiss their concerns as overreactions or resistance to having a new authority figure. "She's just trying to help us establish a routine," he would say, not understanding that Sarah was establishing her dominance, not their family's well-being. The most painful aspect was watching Sarah systematically erase any remaining traces of their mother. The special vase their mother had always used for fresh flowers was replaced with one Sarah considered more stylish. Their mother's recipes were improved upon with different ingredients. Even the garden their mother had lovingly tended was being redesigned to suit Sarah's tastes. Each change was a small death, another piece of their mother disappearing from their daily life. Alex found themselves spending more time in their bedroom, the last sanctuary in the house. They had moved all the family photos there, creating a shrine to the life that was slipping away. At night, they would often lie awake, listening to Sarah and their father laughing downstairs, feeling like an intruder in what had once been their home. The isolation was crushing, made worse by the fact that their father seemed completely blind to what was happening. One evening, Alex overheard Sarah on the phone with a friend, her voice dripping with condescension as she talked about dealing with a teenager who was attached to the past. She mentioned how she was gradually making changes that Alex would eventually have to accept, comparing it to training a resistant pet. The casual cruelty of her words made Alex's blood run cold. This wasn't about building a new family. It was about complete control and elimination of anything that stood in her way. As the weeks passed, Alex noticed Sarah becoming bolder in her actions. She started referring to the house as her home and to their father as her family, with Alex conspicuously excluded from this new definition. She began making plans for holidays and vacations that somehow always seemed to involve Alex being sent to stay with relatives or friends. The pattern was becoming increasingly clear, though Alex didn't want to believe what it might mean. Sarah wasn't just trying to become part of the family. She was trying to replace Alex in it. The turning point came on a Saturday morning when Alex discovered their mother's jewelry box missing from its usual spot on the dresser. Frantic searching revealed it in the garage, tucked away with other items Sarah had deemed clutter. Inside, several pieces of their mother's jewelry were gone, replaced by inexpensive costume jewelry. When confronted, Sarah claimed she was simply organizing and that the missing pieces were being professionally cleaned. But Alex knew better. These were irreplaceable items, gifts their father had given their mother on special occasions, things Sarah couldn't possibly understand the value of. That afternoon, Alex decided to start documenting Sarah's behavior. They began keeping a detailed journal of incidents, dates, and specific examples of Sarah's attempts to erase their mother's memory and marginalize Alex in their own home. The entries grew longer each day as Sarah's tactics became more overt and calculated. She would accidentally forget to include Alex in family dinner plans, leave them off grocery lists, and make plans with their father for weekends when she knew Alex had specifically requested to spend time together. Sarah's campaign extended beyond the home. She began showing up at school events unannounced, introducing herself to teachers as Alex's mother. The embarrassment and confusion this caused were immense, especially when teachers who knew their family situation looked at Alex with questioning eyes. Sarah even attempted to join the Parent-Teacher Association, positioning herself as the concerned mother figure. Each time, Alex had to quietly correct the assumption, watching as Sarah played the victim, claiming she was just trying to be involved because she cared so much. The psychological manipulation intensified. Sarah would leave helpful articles on Alex's bed about teenagers who struggle with accepting new parental figures or about the negative effects of being too attached to deceased parents. She made comments about how unhealthy it was to live in the past and how moving forward required letting go of things that held you back. The subtext was clear. Alex was the problem, the obstacle to everyone's happiness. Their father's work schedule became more demanding around this time, with him taking on projects that required longer hours and occasional overnight trips. Sarah seemed to encourage this, framing it as an opportunity for him to advance his career. What it really meant was more time for her to establish her authority without his interference. During these periods, the atmosphere in the house grew even more tense. Sarah would drop the pretense of kindness entirely, ignoring Alex unless absolutely necessary, and creating an environment of hostility and discomfort. Alex's friends noticed the change. They commented on how different Alex seemed, quieter, more withdrawn, constantly looking over their shoulder. When Sarah would answer the door when friends came to pick up Alex, she would make pointed comments about how much time Alex was spending with them, suggesting they were a bad influence. She created a narrative that Alex was troubled, acting out because they couldn't accept their father's happiness, slowly isolating Alex from their support system. The most disturbing development was Sarah's growing control over their father. She began managing his schedule, screening his calls, and even intercepting emails. When Alex tried to call their father at work to discuss what was happening, Sarah would answer his phone, claiming he was too busy to talk. She created a bubble around him, filtering information and painting a picture of a difficult, resentful teenager who was making her life difficult. The few times Alex did manage to speak with their father alone, he seemed distracted, echoing Sarah's sentiments about giving things time and trying harder to adjust. As the months passed, Alex felt themselves becoming a ghost in their own home. They ate meals alone in their room, avoided common areas when Sarah was home, and felt like a visitor rather than a family member. The house no longer felt like a sanctuary, but a prison where someone else held the keys. Sarah's presence had infected every corner, every routine, every aspect of what had once been a safe and loving environment. The systematic nature of her campaign became undeniable. She wasn't just settling into a new life. She was systematically dismantling the old one, piece by piece, with Alex as the final piece to be removed. Alex's 16th birthday approached with a sense of dread rather than celebration. In previous years, their father had always made a special effort to honor the day, recognizing how difficult birthdays were without their mother. But this year, Sarah had already announced plans for a family dinner that included her relatives, none of whom Alex had ever met. When Alex expressed a desire to celebrate quietly with just their father, Sarah accused them of being selfish and ungrateful. The day before the birthday, Alex came home to find Sarah in their room, surprising them by redecorating. The walls, once covered with posters, photos of friends, and mementos from their mother, were now painted a neutral beige. The personal items had been boxed up and placed in the closet. Sarah explained that she was creating a more mature space for Alex, but the message was unmistakable. This was her house now, and even Alex's private room wasn't exempt from her control. That night, Alex made a decision. They had been keeping a journal, but it wasn't enough. Words could be denied, interpretations could be debated. Alex needed undeniable proof of what was happening. Using savings from a part-time job, they bought a small voice-activated recorder, the kind that looked like a USB drive. They began carrying it with them at all times, placing it strategically in rooms when conversations with Sarah seemed likely to occur. The recordings revealed a side of Sarah that was even more manipulative than Alex had imagined. When she thought no one was listening, her voice would change from sweet and accommodating to cold and calculating. In one recording, she was on the phone with her sister, discussing how difficult Alex was and how she was patiently working on solutions. In another, she could be heard moving things in their father's office, apparently going through his papers and emails. The most damning recording came 2 weeks before their father was scheduled to leave for a week-long business conference. Sarah was having lunch with a friend, and Alex had left the recorder on the kitchen counter, pretending to be doing homework nearby. The conversation chilled Alex to the bone. Sarah spoke openly about her plan to resolve the Alex situation while their father was away. She mentioned looking into boarding schools, discussing legal options for a step-parent to gain custody, and even researching how to have a teenager declared incorrigible. The casual way she discussed these options, as if planning a vacation rather than destroying a child's life, was horrifying. Alex made copies of the most incriminating recordings, storing them in multiple places, a cloud drive, a flash drive hidden at school, and even emailed to a trusted aunt. They weren't sure how they would use this evidence, but they knew they needed to protect themselves. The recordings also revealed something else. Sarah had been meeting with a lawyer, discussing her rights as a future step-parent and how to expedite her position in the family. She wasn't just waiting for their father to propose. She was actively planning her legal strategy. As the conference date approached, Sarah's behavior became even more pointed. She started making comments about how much easier things would be once the adjustment period was over. She left brochures for residential programs on the kitchen counter, claiming they were for a friend's child. She even began packing some of Alex's belongings into boxes, explaining that she was just helping them organize and that it would be good to have things ready for a fresh start. Their father remained completely unaware, caught up in work pressures and Sarah's carefully crafted narrative. She had convinced him that Alex was struggling with abandonment issues and that professional intervention might be necessary. She even suggested that while he was at his conference, it might be a good opportunity for Alex to stay with her sister, who supposedly had experience with troubled teens. The web she was weaving was intricate and deceptive, designed to remove Alex from the picture before their father could realize what was happening. The night before their father left, Alex tried one last time to warn him. They attempted to show him the journal, to explain the recordings, to make him understand the danger they were in. But Sarah was there, intercepting the conversation, framing it as teenage drama and attention-seeking behavior. She played the part of the concerned, patient step-parent to perfection, even offering to cancel her plans to stay home with Alex. Their father, torn between his child and his girlfriend, ultimately sided with Sarah, promising to address the issues when he returned from his trip. As he drove away the next morning, Alex stood at the window, watching his car disappear down the street, feeling utterly alone and terrified of what the coming week would bring. Sarah's smile from behind the curtain sent a clear message. The real plan was about to begin. The first day after their father's departure began with an unnerving calm. Sarah made breakfast, setting an extra place as if expecting company. She explained that her sister would be arriving later that day to help evaluate the situation. The clinical language sent a shiver down Alex's spine. When Alex asked what that meant, Sarah simply smiled and said that sometimes families need professional help to make difficult decisions about what's best for everyone involved. Throughout the day, Sarah moved around the house with an unsettling purpose. She boxed up more of Alex's belongings, labeling them with neat precision. She made phone calls in hushed tones, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been present when her father was home. Each time Alex entered a room, she would quickly enter conversation or change the subject, but the recorder in Alex's pocket captured everything. By afternoon, Sarah's sister arrived, a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Sarah, but with an even colder demeanor. She carried a briefcase and immediately set up what she called a temporary office in the dining room. The two women spoke in low voices, occasionally glancing toward Alex with calculating looks. Alex, pretending to study at the kitchen table, kept the recorder running, capturing every detail of their conversation. The pieces of Sarah's plan began to fall into place through these recordings. She and her sister were discussing a youth behavioral facility in another state, one that specialized in family transition issues. They had already made inquiries about admission requirements, waiting periods, and transportation. They talked about legal documentation, about how to get their father to sign consent forms without fully understanding what he was approving. The sophistication of their scheme was terrifying. This wasn't a spontaneous decision, but a well-researched, carefully orchestrated plan. That evening, Sarah informed Alex that they would be leaving for the facility the next day. She presented it as a therapeutic opportunity, a chance to work through adjustment difficulties in a supportive environment. When Alex protested, Sarah's demeanor shifted instantly from caring to authoritarian. She revealed that she had already contacted the school, informing them that Alex would be transferring to a special program. She had even intercepted an email from Alex's best friend, responding as Alex to say they were taking a break from social activities to focus on personal growth. The full extent of Sarah's isolation tactics became clear. She had been systematically cutting Alex off from every potential source of help. Friends, teachers, even extended family members. She had created a narrative of a troubled teenager in need of intervention, and she had done it so thoroughly that no one would question Alex's sudden disappearance from social circles and school activities. The trap had been springing for months, and Alex had walked right into it without realizing until the door was about to close. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. They lay in bed, listening to the sounds of Sarah and her sister finalizing their plans. The recordings from the day revealed even more disturbing details. They had discussed the facility's limited communication policies, the fact that Alex would only be able to call their father once a week, and even how they would handle any attempts by Alex to reach out to other relatives. They had thought of everything. Early the next morning, Alex made a desperate decision. While Sarah and her sister were distracted with final arrangements, Alex retrieved all the recordings they had made over the past months. They compiled the most incriminating evidence onto a single flash drive, along with a detailed timeline of events. They wrote a letter to their father, explaining everything that had happened and begging him to listen to the recordings before making any decisions. The challenge now was getting this evidence to their father before Sarah could complete her plan. Alex knew that once they were at this facility, it would be nearly impossible to contact anyone. Sarah had already mentioned that all personal belongings would be confiscated upon arrival, including any electronic devices. This was Alex's only chance. As Sarah announced it was time to leave, Alex pretended to comply, gathering a small bag as instructed. But hidden in their shoe was the flash drive containing all the evidence. During a bathroom stop on the way to the facility, Alex would need to find a way to mail the drive to their father at his hotel. His itinerary had been left on the kitchen counter, and Alex had memorized the information. It was a risky plan, but it was the only one they had. The car ride was tense. Sarah drove while her sister sat in the back with Alex, maintaining a watchful silence. They were headed toward the highway, away from the familiar streets of their neighborhood. Alex's heart raced as they mentally rehearsed what needed to happen at the rest stop. The recorder continued to capture Sarah's conversation with her sister, revealing even more details about how they would handle any resistance from Alex or questions from their father. Every word added to the mounting evidence of premeditation and manipulation. As they approached the rest area, Alex felt a mix of terror and determination. This was their moment, the only chance to expose Sarah's plan before it was too late. As the car pulled into the parking lot, Alex took a deep breath, preparing to execute a plan that would either save them or seal their fate. The next few minutes would determine everything. The rest stop was bustling with travelers, providing the perfect cover for what Alex needed to do. As Sarah and her sister escorted Alex toward the restroom, they maintained a firm grip on their arm, as if anticipating an escape attempt. Inside the facility, Alex pretended to use the restroom while quickly accessing the mailing address of their father's hotel from a saved photo on their phone. With trembling hands, they slipped the flash drive into an envelope, along with the letter they had written, and dropped it into the mailbox near the exit. When Alex returned to the car, Sarah's sister seemed suspicious, searching Alex's pockets and bag with practiced efficiency. Finding nothing, she nodded to Sarah, and they continued their journey. The relief of having mailed the evidence was short-lived as the reality of the situation set in. They were now completely at Sarah's mercy, with no guarantee that their father would receive the package in time or believe its contents if he did. The facility was even more intimidating than Alex had imagined. Located in a remote area, surrounded by high fences and security gates, It looked more like a prison than a therapeutic center. Inside, the staff processed Alex with cold efficiency, collecting personal belongings and explaining the strict rules. Sarah handled all the paperwork, signing documents with a confidence that suggested she had done this before. As Alex was led away to what would be their room, Sarah called out with false sweetness that she would visit in a week and that they should make the most of this growth opportunity. The first few days in the facility were a blur of orientation sessions, psychological evaluations, and group therapy. Communication with the outside world was severely limited, a single 10-minute phone call each week, monitored by staff. Alex's first call was to their father, but Sarah had apparently gotten to him first. He sounded distant and disappointed, echoing Sarah's words about needing to embrace change and work through resistance issues. He mentioned receiving a package from Alex, but hadn't had time to look at it yet, promising to review it after his conference ended. The timeline was working against Alex. Meanwhile, Sarah's plan continued to unfold. Through casual conversations with staff, Alex learned that Sarah had already paid for a month of treatment in advance and had provided detailed background information about Alex's behavioral problems. She had even supplied the facility with a letter from a therapist, later discovered to be a colleague of Sarah's sister, recommending intensive intervention. The thoroughness of her deception was staggering. On the fourth day, a breakthrough came. A new staff member, reviewing Alex's file, noticed discrepancies between Sarah's account and what she was observing in Alex's behavior. She took an unusual interest in Alex's situation, asking questions that suggested she suspected something wasn't right. That evening, she found a way to give Alex access to a computer, claiming it was for a therapeutic writing assignment. With this unexpected opportunity, Alex sent emails to several trusted contacts, including their aunt and the school counselor, attaching copies of the recordings and explaining the situation. The next 24 hours were critical. Sarah, anticipating that her plan might be exposed, arranged for an expedited court hearing to grant her temporary guardianship, citing emergency circumstances. She had prepared documentation, including falsified incident reports and manipulated communications from their father. The hearing was scheduled for the following day, and if it went in her favor, Alex would be legally bound to the facility for an indefinite period. What Sarah didn't know was that their father had finally opened the package. The recordings had shaken him to his core, forcing him to see the truth behind Sarah's carefully constructed facade. He had spent the night listening to the evidence of her manipulation, her plans, and her systematic campaign to remove Alex from his life. By morning, he was on a flight back home, determined to stop Sarah. The hearing room was tense when Alex arrived, escorted by facility staff. Sarah was already there, looking confident and composed, her sister by her side. But as the proceedings began, their father burst into the room, phone in hand, playing the most incriminating recordings for all to hear. The judge listened with growing concern as Sarah's plot was exposed in her own words. Her composure crumbled as she realized the game was up. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Temporary custody was immediately returned to their father. A restraining order was issued against Sarah, who was escorted from the courthouse in shock. The facility, now aware of the deception, released Alex into their father's care. As they drove away from the place that had almost become their prison, Alex felt the weight of the past months lifting, replaced by the relief of justice served. The days that followed were filled with difficult conversations and emotional processing. Their father, consumed by guilt for not seeing the truth sooner, apologized repeatedly. He explained how Sarah had systematically isolated him too, manipulating his perceptions and creating a false reality that served her purposes. The healing process would be long, but for the first time in months, Alex felt safe in their own home. Sarah faced legal consequences for her actions, including charges of fraud and attempted unlawful custody. The recordings Alex had made became crucial evidence in the case against her. The story gained local media attention, which led to other victims of similar schemes coming forward with their own experiences. Sarah's pattern of targeting vulnerable families with children was exposed, preventing her from harming others. As summer approached, Alex and their father began rebuilding what had been broken. They sorted through the house, restoring their mother's belongings and creating new memories that honored the past while embracing the future. The experience had changed them both, strengthening their bond and teaching them valuable lessons about trust, manipulation, and the courage to stand up for truth. In the end, Alex's decision to document everything had not only saved them, but had exposed a predator and protected others from similar fates. The recordings that had begun as a desperate act of self-preservation had become instruments of justice,